What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 351 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Batman Dark Knight 3 Master Race. This is a 9-issue miniseries that is a sequel to The Dark Knight Strikes Again and is the third part of Frank Miller's Dark Knight trilogy that's been going on since 1986, I think. And this is by Frank Miller, Brian Azzarello, Andy Kubert, Klaus Janson, Brad Anderson, and Alex Sinclair. So if you want to know my quick 10-second review of this book without watching what is probably going to be a very long video, I think this is not as good as The Dark Knight Returns, but better than Dark Knight Strikes Again. I don't think that this is a good book, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I do think it has some problems. I think that it makes some of the same mistakes that The Dark Knight Strikes Again did, but if I had to choose which one I wanted to reread several times, I would choose this one over Dark Knight Strikes Again. The biggest problem that I have with this book is that it is a sequel to Dark Knight Strikes Again. It doesn't just pretend like that book didn't exist. I know a lot of people, when it came out, really did not like Dark Knight Strikes Again. I read it a few years after it came out, and I didn't really like it as much as Dark Knight Returns, and I still don't like it very much now. It's been several years, and I had some time to kind of mellow on it, and the last time I reread it, I still didn't think that it was that good, but I don't think that it's the worst thing that I've ever read. But this does reference some of the stuff that was put down in that book. For example, Superman and Wonder Woman's daughter that was introduced in Dark Knight Strikes Again, she is a major player in this book. So if you did not like Dark Knight Strikes Again, and you want to try and read this and pretend like that didn't happen, kind of like how, I don't know, Superman Returns pretends like Superman 3 and Superman 4 didn't actually happen. This doesn't do that. This is a sequel to Dark Knight Strikes Again, but it also ignores a lot of the stuff from that book in order for the plot of this book to happen. So basically the plot here is that Bruce Wayne is getting old, and he doesn't look as old as he did in Dark Knight Strikes Again. In that book, he looked like he was maybe 250 years old, whereas here, he looks like he's maybe 80. In fact, he doesn't even look like he's as old as he was in Batman Beyond. He is walking with a cane, but he doesn't look that old. He looks like he's a little younger than he was in Batman Beyond, but he has pretty much given up being Batman. Now Carrie Kelly is Batman, and she's going around saying that Bruce Wayne is dead. And then Lara, the daughter of Superman and Wonder Woman, she brings the bottle city of Kandor to the Atom and says that the people of Kandor want to be unshrunk. They want to be normal size again. And then the Atom, he's able to bring them up to normal size, and it turns out all the people that he brings up, they are terrorists who want to take over the world. They are the master race that this book is about. And then they go about basically giving an ultimatum to the people of planet Earth, saying, we're going to be your new gods. And then Bruce Wayne, he says, no, you're not. And then there's a big war against them, and that's basically the plot of the book. Like I said, this ignores quite a bit of stuff from The Dark Knight Strikes Again in order for the plot of this book to happen. For example, at the end of The Dark Knight Strikes Again, most of the population of Kandor was grown up, or they were made bigger so that they could fight against Brainiac and Luthor. I was a little confused reading this, where Lara said the people of Kandor are tired of being small. I thought they had already been unshrunk. So that was a little weird that this is just straight up ignoring that. Also, we have Lara here. She is a pretty huge part of this book, but this book is pretty much ignoring where The Dark Knight Strikes Again ended with her. At the end of that book, she and Superman are floating above Earth, and they're looking at the planet, and she says, what are we going to do with our planet, Father? And while that book is not very good, and I don't think that Frank Miller has a very good grasp on the character of Superman, that was a panel and that was an image that has stuck with me since I read that book. I've always wanted to know what Frank Miller would do with that as a setup for a book. Kind of a Superman in the Dark Knight Returns universe, trying to raise his daughter, perhaps becoming a totalitarian ruler of the planet Earth, since this is Frank Miller we're talking about, and that is something that his Superman would do. And then this book pretty much ignores that premise and just says that Superman went into hiding and went to his Fortress of Solitude and froze himself solid, and then his daughter just kind of went around with no adult guidance and didn't really know what to do with herself. So she goes and takes the bottle city of Kandor to the Atom, and then these guys come and they murder a whole bunch of Kandorians. I'm assuming there were like 1,000 Kandorians on this platform about to be grown up, and only some of them were working for this terrorist guy named Quar. And I'm assuming the ones who weren't working for Quar, as soon as Quar and his followers were made big, they instantly just killed the ones who were not Quar's followers. And then Lara is just watching this. She doesn't have any problem with him committing mass murder murder. She doesn't have any problem with him saying that he wants to kidnap her baby brother. She is just kind of an innocent, I don't want to say innocent bystander. She's watching all this stuff happen, and there are many times where she could put a stop to this, but she's just kind of a brat. She doesn't really have any interest in being a hero. And then at the end of the book, finally, she does make a move. She does decide to be a hero, but by that point, I don't care about this character. I don't like Lara. She's very unlikable. If it wasn't for her, a lot of the stuff that happens in this book would not be able to happen. She is kind of the plot MacGuffin for a lot of the bad stuff in this book to actually happen. And I feel like if Superman hadn't gone into hiding, then she wouldn't be acting the way that she is here. And this book doesn't really give a very good reason why Superman went into hiding. At one point, Batman, I think he said it's been 3 years that Superman has been in hiding, which doesn't make any sense because his and Wonder Woman's baby, not Lara, but the baby, Wonder Woman said she was pregnant at the end of Dark Knight Strikes Again. That baby is actually a baby here, so it shouldn't be more than like a year that Superman has been gone, but I'm pretty sure at one point Batman said it's been 3 years, and then later at the end of the book, he suspects that maybe Superman got a little angry because the people of Earth weren't willing to admit that they needed him. I don't think that that is something that would bother the actual Superman of DC Comics, but then again, Frank Miller, like I said, he doesn't really have a good grasp on the character of Superman, so maybe his version of Superman would go into hiding over something so petty, but we don't really get a good reason why Superman went into hiding. We don't get a good reason why he and Wonder Woman are just the worst parents in the world. Neither one of them have really tried raising Lara at all. Lara is just a brat, like I said. She just does whatever she wants. She doesn't seem to have a problem with this crazy psychopath guy kidnapping her baby brother and murdering a whole bunch of people. At one point, Quar's son does try to kill a few human beings, and she stops him. She says, we don't have to kill human beings to have fun. But then there's all this other horrible stuff that she does and is party to that just makes me say, I don't like this character, and I don't really like the way that this book puts her here in this certain place so that she does the things that she does. I think that it's kind of weak writing that they just kind of shuffle Superman off into the Fortress of Solitude so that Lara can do the things that she does. Kind of like Dark Knight Strikes Again, Batman doesn't do a whole lot here, but this isn't as bad as Dark Knight Strikes Again. He does have a bigger part to play here than he did in that book, and this book does have a whole lot of Justice League members who are kind of taking screen time from Batman. We get a little bit of Wonder Woman, we get a little bit of Green Lantern, the Flash shows up just for a little bit. Aquaman is there for 3 pages. Hawkman and Hawkwoman are there very briefly. Mostly, these characters, they're not taking up as much screen time as they did in Dark Knight Strikes Again, but I still feel like this is not Batman's book like it should be. What I like about Dark Knight Returns so much is it's a character piece about Batman getting older and then trying to get back into this young man's game of being a superhero. Dark Knight Strikes Again and this book to an extent, they feel more like Frank Miller just wants to play around with an entire DC universe that's gotten older and not necessarily doing another Batman story. Batman is more present here than he was in Dark Knight Strikes Again, but he still doesn't feel like the true protagonist of this book. I do like getting to see some of these characters a little bit older, a little bit past their prime, still trying to do the stuff that they do. I really like the stuff with Green Lantern here. I like the position that he's in where he's trying to, I guess, get his head back in the game after something kind of awful happens to him. I wish we could see just a Frank Miller version of this Justice League. Instead of doing a Dark Knight 4 or whatever, just do a Dark Knight Returns Justice League story. Say this is set in the same world as the Dark Knight Returns, and we're going to show you this version of Hawkman and Hawkwoman, Flash, Green Lantern, the Atom. I think that would be really cool, since very clearly he has an interest in putting those characters into his stories. I think it'd be really neat if he could just do a story with those characters where he doesn't feel obligated to have Batman take up most of the story, even though he's already told his ultimate Batman story. So anyway, if you really, really like Frank Miller, if you really hated Dark Knight Strikes Again, I don't know if I should tell you to get this or not. I liked it a lot more than Dark Knight Strikes Again. I think it is a superior story, but it doesn't completely ignore Dark Knight Strikes Again. So if that story to this day still leaves a bad taste in your mouth, you may not want to read this, because it is going to remind you that that other story exists. But at the same time, it does a lot to kind of regress that story a little bit so that this story can happen. I liked it a lot. I don't think that it's as bad as Dark Knight Strikes Again. I just don't think that it's necessarily a good story. I think it's a fun story. I had a lot of fun reading it, but I don't think that it's necessarily a good story that's going to stand the test of time like Dark Knight Returns did. So those are my thoughts on Master Race. I hope that you guys like this video. I probably could have talked about this book a little longer. There are other things that I feel like I could get into, but overall, those are my basic thoughts on this book. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.